But it was at the end. I know why you want me to say this, you saucy git. There was always something crooked. But when you buy cannabis off those people, they want you to have a bit of respect that you don't try it. I'm an addict. All I want to do is get high. My dad was probably one of the toughest men I've ever met, but also one of the weakest men I've ever met. Everything he'd done, there was always a bird in the background. Do I love my neighbour? How could I love my neighbour? I don't even love myself. I was always in trouble with women. I was always having pots thrown at me and kettles and flower vases, and I used to love it. and it was just part of the game. He smashed me right on the chops. As I fell over, a dog bit me up the arse in the park. And I used to really suffer with bad rage, Michael. Sweet.
Yeah, thanks. Sorry I asked you to do that. Okay, our sponsor for this episode is SpaceMade. SpaceMade offer flexible workspaces throughout the UK, and they currently have the following London locations: Queen's Park, The Strand, Fitzrovia, Swiss Cottage and London Fields, as well as City Centre Leeds and City Centre Bristol. To find out more, do check out their website at www.spacemade.co. And finally, I would like to give a big thank you to the whole team there. I really am grateful for your support you've given us from day one, and it really won't be forgotten. If you are looking for a great space to work, guys, do check them out via the links in the description below, and for any direct inquiries, you can email them via info@spacemade.co. Thanks for listening and enjoy the show.
So that was my mum and dad, yeah?
All right, okay.
That's my mum, that's my dad.
I remember you said your dad used to put vinegar and oil on himself and
Did I tell you that?
It's in the book.
And tan himself.
Yeah.
My nan used to do that as well.
That was prior to that. That was him. You wouldn't want a right-hander off him.
Yeah.
That was him, and that was early days. And that was that, and then that was that. What else is there? I know.
God, he looks brown there, doesn't he?
That's what he says in his book. My dad used to. What do you say? Your dad used to brown.
That's right. He used to put oil, vinegar, and oil.
Yeah.
But we used to have it on it. And you know what? We never used to burn. Yeah. Maybe because we were sort of, I don't know. Maybe it was in our blood. But it'd go vinegar and oil, son. And my mum and him and my brother and sister, I mean, we was quite a tight unit. Mm. You know, it was a great unit. But where he had his problems, she was the orchestrator of love. So whatever he was, you know, if you give to something that doesn't want to receive or don't know how to receive, eventually the persistence of love is a game changer, because it breaks down. It breaks down. If you love, it's the antidote for everything.
Yeah.
So because she loved naturally, she never had to source or force herself.
It just came to us so
naturally
in her being.
So he had that and she had that. So it was like the God and the devil, really. And it amalgamated, and she absolutely adored him. But he adored her. But when he left my mum, and this is the traits that we both had. And there's similarities to it, but this is why I know it's too similar, that. And it wasn't because I copied what he done, because I didn't like what he done, and I done it myself in a reactional way, not in a planned way. It was the desire to want and get, not the actually having. I want it, I'm getting it. That was the buzz.
The chase.
The chase. It was high energy. It attached itself to my trauma. Because my trauma needed to be fixed, the hole needed to be fixed. That's when I got touched by God, it touched that part. But it still didn't stop me doing what I was doing, it does today. But so my mother was the most incredible lady, and she created a home, and it wasn't ostentatious. It wasn't because he was criminals that we had all gold hanging about everywhere. We had quite we had a cool home.
Yeah, you mentioned in the book your dad almost deliberately didn't overdo it because number one, he just thought it was a reason to get caught, and number two, he just didn't like the people he saw do it. Is that right?
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct. So there was a part of him that, like, his car was normal. And it was just how his mindset was. I mean, eventually when we got arrested, he was living in a house in a small little village just round the back of Epsom. And there was about 4 shops, church, big green, cottages and these big houses. He had one of the cottages. And he used to sit in his garden where he could be seen. And at that particular time, we was probably up there with the top smugglers in the UK, fact. And he would sit in his garden and labelling. He used to go to Boots' house and buy little cups and saucers, and he'd be sitting there all day just putting like 10 pences and 20 pences. And I go, "What are you doing?" He goes, "I'm all right." One day he used to drive a £1,000 Savannah car. You'd never see him with a flash watch on, never. His house was a semi-detached cottage next to the church.
And the point is, he could have had all of that at one point. He could have had much greater than that.
He could have had grandiosity. I mean, when he was with my mother and we had a house in Epsom, that was quite a nice house. It was a detached house in maybe a fifth of an acre.
Sure.
He had a sort of orchard at the back, little small orchard. He had his greenhouse with his glazed tomatoes. Our house was the mayor's house of Epsom.
Right, okay.
So, you know, it was a sturdy house, good house. He'd done the trick, you know. And he could sustain it. He could show that, you know. He always had straight businesses, my father, as well. You know, he used to mess about with antique furniture. So there was always, like, he used to promote boxing shows, the unlicensed shows with a guy called Joe Park. So he always had something going on. But mainly there was always the element of crime. He was into the VAT frauds back in the day. I'm talking about back in the day, with some sort of known people. And that was like, but I used to do things. There was always a little trick going on. Like if he would always get crooked MOTs, or there was always something crooked, you know, something bent, you know. He always had something going on. So he used to jump in and out. But sort of when he was a young man, when he was sort of, my dad was probably one of the toughest men I've ever met, but also one of the weakest men I've ever met.
Yeah, you talk about that duality a lot in the book, I think. I think it...
well, that's where the spiritual thing came in.
Yeah, that duality of life itself, or at least the human brain, alongside this theme which really stuck with me, the fearless yet fearful at the same time, really stood out.
Well, look, I can only explain, but everything was exaggerated. It was always higher. And the more the hand-me-down train became, mine was more intense than his. So here's a story which I'll give you an example of my dad, yeah? And I'll give you one of me. When he got very ill, he had a dementia, but he also had a part of his brain that was still in touch with reality.
Yeah.
So it was like, not sure whether it was a payback for him, that he was aware of it. But he handled it in a way that was incredible. Because he knew what was going on, and he used to say to me, shh. Because when they used to come in his room shouting all the dementias, I was like, get out of his room. He'd go, stop it. You're not well, Michael. But he stayed there for 18 months in a nappy. And I knew he knew. I knew that he knew. And it's and I'm not saying take that back. A number of people get dementia, and I think it's a very sad illness, actually.
It is very much so.
And it's crippling.
We'll talk about it off camera, but we're working on this, just very in brief, we're working on this football, at least sports nostalgic series, which is all about the nostalgia of sport, especially from the 70s and 80s. And the gentleman I'm doing it with is connected a lot to Alzheimer's societies or charities, and we're going to put a lot of money towards that. So maybe at the right time you could do an episode with us. It'd be really, really interesting.
Oh, lovely. So I've seen a lot of patients in there, And they'd be screaming and shouting and walking about. And some was aware. But my dad, every day I walked into that room, he knew it was Michael. Now, 2 doors along from him, coincidentally, was my wife Tracy's friend's mother. Just coincidentally. This is out in Reigate. And she had it. And I used to say, shut up. But he never had it like that. So he was aware. And he, like when my mother died, he knew without me telling him. He was aware. So it was like a double whammy for him, really. And I'm not saying he was the only one like that in there, but when I think about everyone that was in there, it was like as if he was normal with dementia. It was quite bizarre, really. And the train of thought, where was we going with this when I got to the... So the part of him...
Yeah, well, it's the comparison of you and your dad and the duality of it.
So we was on the farm prior to him going in hospital, and he was unstable on his feet. And at the end of the farm, where the main road was, so it doesn't flood, what they do, they build small little dips in the road like that, so the water can run. But they break up the concrete, so it's like a pebble dash, yeah. And then some people put grass on it and flowers grow. But where we was walking, it was the only place we could walk on down the country lane. Anyway, there's a car. I said, Dad, the car. He's fallen over, and as he's fallen over, a stone embedded into that part of the finger.
Fine.
Anyway, I took him up the hospital, and they said, oh, it's a bit of a bad wound. They clean it, and he comes back. So I say to him, are you all right? But he got to go back in 2 weeks. After about 7 or 8 days, he said, it really feels hot. So I said, come on, we go and check it out. He said, yeah, it feels quite hot. So I walk up there with him, and I take him in to see it. There's a Portuguese doctor there. And I said, oh, his finger's a bit hot. Can you have a look at it? He's come running out the room after he looked at it. He said, his finger's a bit off. He said, he's 24 hours minimum away from losing that finger. And what I can't believe is he doesn't feel it.
Right.
So he didn't feel that pain. That's why he was tough. That he could fight. He was brave. But the flip side, which was related to women, made him very weak and vulnerable. And the two of them was like oil and water, and they didn't mix well. So he got confused. So, like, when he was going into prison, a couple of people said, oh, he had struggle in there because he was very spoiled. But he turned into an extreme... The way he done his prison sentence, I was proud of him. But get him out on the street and have a fight with him, you'd struggle. But when it comes to emotional things, I don't know, there was that, and I had it myself. It was a mixture, so he didn't feel physical pain. But over women, he was like a big tart, and so was I. But my mother gave him that equilibrium that he could survive with that dysfunction, because it was, he was a club owner in Nottingham. He had a record business in Ireland, Everything he'd done, there was always a bird in the background, always, And my mother, I suppose, God bless her, she chose not to, if she ever threatened to leave, it would have killed him. So it was like as if she was duty bound, and it never really she coped with it well.
Is that why you think she never left?
Because of us. She was incredible.
So she felt it was her, like you said, duty bound.
She was duty bound, but she wasn't submissive and trodden over.
Yeah.
She was the powerhouse of the family.
So she wasn't having it from him, but she still stayed because of you as children.
Well, it wasn't that apparent that he was doing it all the time. But there was always, as I've grown older, I've found out. But she was just, we was like an Italian family. It was quite bizarre. And there was such I don't want to use the word regimental with love, but there was a regimental love in the house. There was a real organised love between us all. We were very close, extremely close, and he loved us. He would have died for us. That's why I'm going to honour him when I want to make this Netflix series because I want people to really know what he was rather than what they imagined he was.
Fine.
And he was a very bright man, so there was a conflict there for him. He should have been. He was a technical drawing, they used to call it. So it's like a surveyor or an architect. He had the brain. He ran at White City in the 440, which was prior to the All English Sports. I think he finished second. He was a champion amateur boxer. He thought he was a builder, but he was diabolical. And there was that going on, and life goes so quick that I think when we lose track of the truth, I mean, Rod Stewart got away with it because he used to remarry and do it all. But my dad and I, these fairs were very dark. And I'm not saying the women were dark, because I don't want to disrespect the women, but that was one of the traits that we both repeated. Now, I hated it. I really hated it. So that is where I believe the spiritual aspect comes in. And it's not a cop-out. And I was abused and all things like that. So my opposite. So my dad wasn't frightened of a big, strong man. But if you got him in a corner and locked him away from his girlfriend, he'd act like a...
He needed someone else. He always needed someone else. He wasn't necessarily... And I guess you put yourself in that same category. You weren't very good at being alone.
Well, I'm not sure if... I mean, that was part of it. But the point I'm trying to make is the yin and yang of the spirit. Yeah, the good and the bad, the opposite, the fear, the fearless. I think it all depends what mindset you take on as well with this stuff. So I would do things... Here's an example of Michael, yeah? I was in... can I say this? Yeah, I will say it. I was out in Morocco, yeah, with a known villain from London, but he was more of a... He was a... I shouldn't name him, really. He's an old man, he's 92.
Okay.
But he had a way about him, this man. He wasn't violent, but he's a very good-looking man, Irish, come from a good background. And he was friends with people like Richard Harris, Ronnie Corbett. He was married to a beautiful lady whose father was a very, very wealthy man, and they was friends of the people that know it is. I'm not going to name him. And they were friends with Jack Warner. He knew the Italian families. Joe Bagano was head of one of the 5 families in New York. He met Frank Sinatra, and he was a very unusual character. I was with him yesterday, actually, and his wife lived down there, and she married someone with influence, and I won't say it was and what happened there. Maybe one day, and so that was the sort of an introduction of some sort of naughty stuff that went out in Morocco. But when you buy cannabis off those people, they want you to have a bit of respect that you don't try it. Yeah, it was a level of,
So you mean at the time you don't test the product?
Well, you do. It's different environments, but this environment was meant to be respectable,
right?
Because there was someone with big authority there. I can't say what they were, but it was massive.
Yeah.
It was a green light, put it like that.
Yeah.
And then there was two Moroccan boys, and me, and my mate. I'm an addict, so we go to this incredible building in the back of the Casbah, and it was like a 50 pence piece shape, and it went up like a torrent. and there was kids playing in the courtyard. Now, when you went in the door, it looked a lovely door, but it looked a little bit, whoa, where are we going? And it opened up, there was a beautiful fountain there. And as you went up this spiral staircase, there was probably about 3 different landings. And this 50p shape went all the way up. So there was windows open with like linen drapes coming through. It was beautiful. And there's a kitchen there, this there. And then when we get up to the top, where's the meeting there? So I'm sitting there and I sort of sit by the windows. There's no glass there. So they're just gaps like in the wall. And so I'm sort of staring in the courtyard. I thought, isn't it lovely here? And they're having a chat, yeah. And I'm meant to come sort of from like the London families. Your Joe Piles, your Brian Emmett's, your all that sort of stuff, yeah. And I'm just a crazy addict, a young kid who likes getting a few quid. I was about 30, I suppose. So, no, he says, you don't have to try this stuff. My Moroccan accent is not good. You don't have to try this stuff. All I want to do is get high. I'm not really worried about the respect.
Yeah.
Anyway, it was strong. It was a thing called pollen.
Yeah.
So...
Yeah, I remember that.
We're talking business. And they go, oh yeah, this is this guy, this is okay, and this is... They know this one, and he's friends with the Cray twins. This is my friend. The Richardsons, all that stuff. Frankie...
They're building you up. They're building you up.
Well, they're not building us... Yeah, they are building up, but it happens
To the other people.
happens to be true, but they're not saying that. They already know it. So I'm giving you that conversation wasn't being had there, but they knew it. So that was the respect in the room. Then, and the crazy addict comes along, me. Don't give a shit.
I love how it's like I'm the crazy addict comes along there.
Don't give a monkey.
Yeah.
So I say to him, I want to try it.
Yeah.
Oh, this is this. So they bring me over this sort of chillum. Yeah.
I've had a chillum.
So, boom, it's strong.
It's fucking strong, yeah.
Boom. Now they're sort of looking at me with a little bit disgust. I mean, it ain't that bad that I'm smoking it, but I suppose we're talking business. It's an element of trust. It wasn't to me. I wanted to get stoned. So that's all right. Come on. I finished that. I'm gone. Solid gone. Oh no, can't move. So I'm looking around the room trying to engage.
And then we can just see you getting high.
trying to make it funny.
Yeah.
And this is not funny.
Yeah, this is a serious deal.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
and these some of these people was in places of authority. And I'm there, this crazy young kid. So on the 50p shape where the windows were, so it goes round like that, this building. So I sort of put my foot up on the windowsill. It was a big windowsill. And the breeze is coming through. And sort of, I don't know what's going on in the room. I'm not out of it, but I'm heavily stoned. Yeah. And out the corner of my eye, a mouse runs across my foot, right? It frightened the life out of me. Now, this is the opposite, Michael.
This is the duality you speak of.
Yeah. This is the duality.
Yeah.
I go, oh my God, Mo! And they went, what's wrong? I said, there's a mouse and it's run over my foot. And they went, so what? Hey, this guy, he's meant to be this
tough guy.
This tough guy. And they start laughing at me, right? And my mate's gone, oh, come on. Anyway, I wing it. I try and style it out. But I didn't only did I shout, I jumped up in the floor and went, oh my God! You'd thought there's a bomb arrived. And they looked at me as if to say, what? It's a mile. So what? That's the fear. And it's the beginning of the book. So about probably, I say it's 2 or 3 months, but it was longer than that. It's probably about 6 months later. The conclusion of that meeting. Well, don't put this next bit on, but it's not the conclusion. So 6 months later, which it was 6 months later, I come over Bideford Bridge. Can you hear me, son?
Yeah, I'm just checking he's all good because I know he's doing a lot. When he does that, it's not a real big problem, is it?
Yeah, look.
Do you want me to stop rubbing my beard, Sammy?
No, I think you're all good.
Just double check. Sorry, I was a bit conscious of
Rub
it.
your beard quickly.
And have a chat.
No, it's fine.
Sweet.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's fine.
I really like this young man.
I know you do.
Sorry, I really, really like this young man.
Go on, Mike. So tell us. So 6 months later.
Yeah, but only because I can feel it. So 6 months later, it's in the book. Mm-hmm. I come over Bideford Bridge, and what we didn't know, that there was a story behind this story, what we got arrested for. We sort of knew.
Which arrest?
When I got arrested, the gunpoint.
The last one.
Yeah.
Okay. And we will go into more detail on that. But go on, tell me.
It was whatever it was. But if we're going to go, we'll talk later about it. So when you're doing a drug smuggle like that, the intensity of the arrest sort of shocked me a little bit. Mm. Yeah, armed officers. It was like, whoa, this is pretty, you know. And I suppose it does fit the bill. But when you think about it afterwards, the way they was moving things about by helicopters, it was guns, it was pretty heavy going. Not that you take a lot of notice of that, because the adrenaline kicks in. Mm. But as I get out the car, for some unknown reason, they're calling my name, yeah? And Michael Emmett get out the car. And I don't think I've exaggerated it, if I made the book. But I don't think I have exaggerated. I think it's true, what I say. But the emotion is true. The finer details I'm not sure. I'm sure it's 100% true. But they shout my name out, yeah. When I get out the car, Bracken's it was brave Peter Bracken. Alan Trotter, the driver, he just died a few years ago. But he'd spent a number of years in prison. I'll get to the point. And he collapsed because it was, you know, big lights, guns, night ding, bomb. It was all that craziness. And they were armed to the gunnels. And they shout out, Michael Emmett, get out. So as I get out the car, it's surreal. And what was surreal about it, my voice, only for a few seconds, I took control of the environment by going, now hold up, stop.
So you're saying at the point of the arrest, which was the final arrest, where it was that big bust, which we'll obviously get into later down the line, but there's all this chaos, there's all this going on. You get pulled out of the car.
No, don't get pulled out of the car.
Oh, you don't?
I get out of the car.
You get out of the car, and there's heavy noise, you know, everyone's trying to scare the shit out of you. And at that moment, this is when you shout and raise your voice.
Yeah, so yeah, you're right. So Bracken goes to run and dive in the sea. He was a game brave boy, Bracken. Mm. And in fact, you look a little bit like him. There's a similarity to the movie.
What was Bracken was one of the smugglers with you, right?
He was my co-defendant.
Okay.
Didn't he? He does look a bit like Peter, didn't he? So
he's a smuggler.
Yeah, he was a smuggler.
Yeah. Okay.
But he was a nice boy, Peter. We've had our differences.
I actually remember this. He was the one who told you to stick around, didn't he? And you didn't want to be there. Yeah.
My dad didn't want me to be there. I'm sure whatever, he would disagree with that part of the book, but I'm not bothered what he thinks, to be honest with you. That's my story. So as I get out of the car, Alan Trotter, the driver, he collapses. He's just gone in the front seat. It's too much for him. He was a recovering alcoholic, beautiful man, and I didn't expect. Alan got out the case, but Peter's jumped out, and right there is it's Westwood Hoe. The boat is in the harbour, and Peter's November the 7th. Peter's going to dive in the sea. It's freezing, but he wanted it, Peter, and he was like a rabbit, he was. And I can remember it vividly in the memory. He's out the door. I don't even think the car had stopped. And he was running for the sea. And they got him. I think they might have done him a favour because it was cold. And they sort of pistol whipped him, if I remember rightly. I'm sure they did, and I put it in the book they did. So I'm there on my own with, there was a sea wall here, and there was guns there. And then there was guys running towards me. And it was like an American film, pointing at them like that. And this is true. Michael Emmett, put your hands above your head. Bollocks. Not having it. I'm looking, my mind's looking for a way out. Only seconds this. But when your life's in danger, someone said, how do you remember it? Trust me, you remember it. Trust me, you remember it. Maybe because I've already told the story so many times that it's 30 years ago, and it's fresh because I've repeated the story. Plus, there was a bit of ego and a bit of pride attached to it. You know, I got nicked with armed officers, all rubbish. But this is the point. They come towards me, and I've got someone's number in my pocket, which they're not getting. Concealed weapons! Someone shouts out, and it's all happening. And I go, listen, stop, all of you. And it stopped for about 10 seconds. It went quiet. It was really weird. So the authority of my voice, now listen, fucking stop. Leave him alone. I don't know what I'm doing. Eventually they come behind me, bum, 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 bum. Gun in front of me like that. That mouse frightened me. That gun, and it's not because I'm not frightened of guns, I didn't give a shit. It was weird. So that's the opposite of Michael.
And that's the extreme duality than when you said fearless and yet fearful.
That's it.
That's it, yeah.
But what tripped back in when I was on the floor, and I'm sure I put it in the book, he said, a penny for your thoughts. And all I could think about was my 3 daughters. And it was November the 7th, on a blistering night. I was handcuffed. They handcuffed me behind and I was like a weeble. They pushed me over and he went, yeah, we've got you now, Emmett. And plus they wanted Bracken like they wanted me. But this is my take on it. And he said, a penny for your thoughts. I had tears coming out of my eyes. Not because I was nicked. I thought, my kids, my children. And I think he meant that I was weeping. I said, go on, fuck off. I think he said, what? He said, penny for your thoughts. I said, my kids. He went, what? He's talking about his kids. I said, leave me alone, mate. Fuck off. And I had tears. And I wasn't crying because I was upset. I was crying for my children. So if you take the mouse, you take the gun, and you take the reality. I mean, that is the mixture of opposite woven in my character. And it's uncontrollable. It just happens to have a voice. It has a life. Today it's manageable. But then, because I was ignorant to what it was, it used... And I'm not saying I'm the only one who's like this. You know.
Well, I was wondering if you felt you've seen it a lot in other men, especially young men.
I don't know, really. I just was... I think my life was a blur. I thought it was an excitement ball. I thought it was just everyone was on the funfair and you had to do what you had to do. And I think when you're clouded, that's why I know God's real. Because my card was marked long ago, this is my opinion, I was spiked with a spirit of darkness. And it formulated an opinion, it formulated an action, and it wanted more. People call it addiction. But mine was weird. Hence the affairs was so outrageous.
And continuous.
And so I never learned, my heart learned, but it wasn't my heart what was action. People go, oh, he took liberties. Okay, he took liberties. I'm not trying to hide from it. But if I want to write a list of things of good I've done, trust me, there's a lot, and I'm not here to brag about that. But I think the reason why I sort of got away with it, the reason why I sort of reigned with the dysfunction, because I firmly believe people loved me, because they could see the heart that you've seen. Now, am I looking for, is this a popularity competition? No. Because whatever people think, they think. So my amends to life, and my amends to Michael, my amends to the people I've hurt, my amends to my family, is today I don't do those things. And it gives the atmosphere time to heal. They say time's a good healer. So yeah. So for me today, I feel at one with myself. Let's say I don't feel at one with myself, but I'm closer. Bear Grylls said this, I think it's in the book.
I was going to ask you about this, but yeah, please go ahead.
Yeah. So Bear Grylls says, I should think it's on there somewhere. Yeah, that book there, that top book.
Oh yeah, Facing Up.
I think he signed that, Bear. So Bear, he says the last. I think he says it like this. He says
last 200 meters are the hardest.
Yeah.
On Everest. Yeah.
Yeah, it's where it makes or breaks. And I feel that I'm over that. I'm near the summit. And my idea of being at the summit is not God's idea of me being at the summit. My will.
Why do you reference God there? Why is
well, it's very important to me. God's will.
Okay, fine. So you feel.
I feel.
You feel God's vision or will towards you is different from what you have in mind.
I wouldn't say it's different. I would say I wouldn't say it's different. I'd say the emotion behind it. Okay. So if I want it for Michael's self-gratification, it will only. I'll get to the summit and I'll have to go another 200 meters because it wouldn't be fulfilling. It would be me. I'm not saying I'm not against the challenge because God doesn't do everything for me, but He empowers me. And I think the godly wisdom is if I get to the summit, how I get there, it would take a lot longer. I've experienced that. I would get to the top and go, achievement. But if I take the will of God to the summit, it creates a peace. It creates an understanding, and it creates the glory of the summit doesn't fill my pride. The glory of the summit, if I do it in the way that God wants me to do it, and that's by being kind to myself and kind to others, then there's a humility about that. And humility is one thing that I've never had. Well, I've had humility in my heart because my head used to take over. This might sound weird to people, but this is my story. The humility in my heart was, I didn't want the glory, but my head and my heart have been at conflict for so many years. And if anyone's listening to this and they're struggling in any way, shape or form, I'm not saying that I've got the secret recipe, but there is a way. Seek, knock, listen, and you'll get answers. So there is a difference in my will and God's will. They may look the same, but it's what it does to the inner being and the heart and the settlement of the mind that I've experienced things. I don't want to keep jumping about, but when I was arrested, there was a part of me that wanted affirmation. Oh, look at him. Yeah.
Well, as if it was almost impressive that you got arrested for that.
Well, in our world it is. I mean,
Yeah.
if Ronaldo scores 20 more goals than Messi, wow.
It's confirmation from your peers, isn't it? That's
correct.
Yeah, that's which people seek in their own bubble, whatever it is.
But for me...
It was the criminal world.
Yeah. But for me, I was involved with one of the biggest drug cannabis smuggling operations. It's far bigger than what we got arrested for.
Yeah.
But that bigness wasn't nothing to do with me. I was part of a chain. So I don't really, but it was big. Yeah. So my arrest, they say 5 ton. There was some aborted. So it was worth a huge amount of money. Yeah, millions. In that same period of my life, when I got touched by God, and as much as you want to, it's my reality, Mike. When I got touched by God, Alpha in prisons become one of the biggest prison ministries in the world.
And just very quickly, so people know, what is Alpha exactly?
So Alpha is an introduction to Christianity. It's not offensive, it's not hard. If you don't like it, you can leave. It's not forced upon you, it's not radical. It's more about the spirit of love.
Right, okay.
Yeah. And you go along, they like non-believers to challenge it, and they like people to not argue about it, but they like to have a firm, good discussion about it. And it's up to you whether you find your faith or not. But it's not by man you find your faith, it's by, there's in the psalmist it says it calls deep to deep. So the calling of God is a deep call in one's spirit, in my opinion. So it's not a mind thing, it's not even a heart thing, it's a very deep part of the being that I think we're all frightened of, personally, in the mystery. But to give you the example of Michael's will and God's will.
Sure.
So a part of me wanted to be, like, God, you see how much cannabis he's been nicked with? It's all delusional crap, yeah? But you can live in that if you want, but it was always a conflict. And I used to talk about it and afterwards think, what are you talking about? Because it wasn't my heart. But that was the territory of being a criminal. Well, yeah, you know how much money he's got, and you know that job, yeah, like the Brinks-Mac job or the Great Train Robbery, or it's all, and I'm not knocking the Great Train Robbers because I knew them all, and most of them, they were beautiful men. I know that might offend people, but I see their hearts even as a child. I used to, a number of them I got really close to. And not because they were the Great Train Robbers. I got close to them because I bloody liked them. I used to get high with them, especially Gordon Goody down in Mahacca. There's another great story that I don't think, it's in the book when we have the fight with it. But let me just finish the point.
You do, because
sorry.
we're going to track back off that to a particular question, but go on.
Because otherwise I'll lose it. I'm so sorry.
Don't apologise.
So, Alpha in prisons. Yeah.
Alpha in prisons, yeah. Because as you said, as you got arrested, Alpha was becoming much more popular in prisons.
No, I started it in prison.
Oh, you started it, sorry, yeah.
So, I wasn't looking to do that. Samantha Fox came down with Daniela, but that's another story how that began. I won't diverse, I'm talking about my emotions here. So, 5 years ago, I was asked to speak at the Albert Hall. Now, I'm a flawed Christian. I'm a flawed man of God who's getting better. I'm not one of these people who go, hallelujah, I've got it tumbled. And I'm not sure if I want to be that man.
I wondered that, when you said that.
Yeah.
I wonder if, I don't see that as you.
No, but I still want to recognise, anyway, that's another story, because we could speak for hours, Mike. But this is what I wanted to say to you. I get asked to talk at the Albert Hall, and the opposite kicked in. But prior to going in the Albert Hall, I went to a workshop in a lovely little church called Queensgate, which was was a guy I know called Paul Cowley, and he's an ex-criminal who became a vicar. So I go into the church. In fact, I wasn't at Queensgate. I was at Holy Trinity Brompton, which is home of Alpha. Queensgate is one of its plants, they call them. So I go into the church at the Albert Hall. My parents had both just died. Yeah, it was sort of that time. Or both my parents. Dad had just died. He died in the January, February, and this was in May. Mum had died 6 months previous. So I'm in the church, and there's this. I love Africa. Don't know if you've been. I love it.
Yeah, South Africa I've been, but unfortunately not anywhere else but that.
Great country, great people.
Yeah.
My opinion. So there's this guy. The only thing I'm not too sure about is their fashion, to be honest with you. So there's this guy. He's got shiny trousers on, Lovely sort of bright coloured shirt. And he looks like a man of stature. Anyway, I'll cut the chase. He comes up on the stage, yeah. And I can find out his name if you want it. But he was put on death row.
Oh, it's the Ugandan fellow, yeah.
Is it in the book?
Yeah, it's in the book.
It's in the book, yeah. So he gets put on death row, yeah. And he's on death row for 26 years. Is it in the book? Of course it's in the book. He's on death row for 26 years. He looks out of his cell door or something like this, sees the Alpha course, does Alpha, yeah, gives his life to Jesus. Yeah? And I know that's the terminology that the world don't really sit with, but it happens to be true. So, it connects with the power greater than us,
Yeah.
okay, which is Jesus, in my opinion. So, and I'm adamant about it. So all of a sudden he goes on stage and he said, I was on death row for 25 years, 26 years. He said, I see the Alpha course. I do the Alpha course. He gets released from prison, yeah, and he gets his job back in the Uganda. It was a political coup, yeah. He survived 26 years. Every day thinking he's going to die every 26 years. Does the Alpha course. He's on stage. And I think it was the course I started. And I thought, my God. The humility in that for me was incredible. Now that's success. If that was a big company, which I started, and the end result was as powerful as that, in the world, that would be deemed successful. It's a miracle, saved his life. But the humbleness, the humility that I found, it brought a tear to my eye. And I felt a voice inside of me, not an audible voice, but a voice say, that's the fruit. And I thought, now, someone else could have started this course, I'm not saying that. But to be at the beginning of something, and then to see someone saved on death row, and now sitting in the same church as me, it's incredible. Now, that didn't take any, I didn't want to boast about that. I was so moved by it. Now, if that was the crime story running alongside of it, yeah, I got nicked by 5 ton. That's Michael. That story, all right, I've wrote it in the book, but it's not something that I take, it doesn't make me feel proud of myself. Or I don't want to be in the Christian community going, do you know what I done? You know, I started Alpha and the geezer was on death row, a group of Christians. Yeah, but you know what I've done? Group of criminals. Listen, I was nicked for 10 ton of puff. In the church, it just does not fit in with the emotional side of. So that's the difference for me.
Yeah.
That's God's will. That's Michael's will. So that's what the point I was trying to make.
Yeah, no, I get it.
There feels a difference in it, Mike.
Okay.
Feels a difference.
I do get it, and I just want to track back a bit because obviously we'll want to put this in at some point. But I guess if we could start from the beginning a bit, you know, who is Michael? Where were you born? Where did you grow up? And those sort of infant and early childhood years. But maybe if you could just summarise a little bit, you know. So if I could ask, where was Michael born? Who was his mum and dad?
Let's start at the very beginning. My father was Brian Emmett and my mother was Jean, and I was born in the flats in Stockwell, behind Stockwell Tube Station, in 1958, on October the 18th. That's where it began. I was in the flats till I was 6. There was the abuse in the flats.
Yeah, well I mean, should we talk about that?
Can we speak about it another time?
Yeah, cool.
Do you mind?
No problem.
I'm all right with it, but I just take the flavour out of me.
Cool.
Although it's a big part of it. But when you get sexually abused, you go into denial, and you don't. They say that the youth is wasted on the young. I mean, there's such beautiful times.
What a phrase.
But
that's a huge irony, that statement. Yeah. But I mean,
I think we're tough as kids as well, though.
Of course. The only thing I would say is just, can we do a little? I don't want to harp on it too much because if you think it would drain your energy, let's not do it now. But what I would say is, obviously you were born in Stockwell. You mentioned where you were born, but in your early age, what sort of 4 or 5,
Yeah.
your babysitter did sexually abuse you.
Yeah, she
essentially.
did. The baby shit.
And just speaking, it was a woman who essentially, without going too much detail, just would what? Just do stuff that you didn't have any knowledge on.
I mean, I don't want to explain that.
Yeah.
I mean, what it was high energy. It wasn't very nice. I was interfered with, I was touched, I was played with, I was wrapped up in a sheet, and it never happened loads of times. It only happened a number of times, but one's too many, and 1,000 not enough in that situation. So it's very dysfunctional.
Yeah.
It's a lot deeper than that, but I don't really want to go there today.
That's fine. Just
it's cool.
As long as there's a little bit so people understand it.
It's cool.
When it happened. Where it happened, sort of thing.
Okay, that's cool. So it was. It's not that I don't want to go into it because I don't want to explain it. I just feel pretty chilled out, Mike. And so there was sexual.
He's enjoyed himself. That's good.
Yeah,
No, please.
So there was sexual abuse. It created trauma, and it created abandonment as well. So if you teach a kid at 4 French, trust me, by the time they're 10, they're going to be proper. They're going to be fluent. So I got taught something that really. You teach kids about playing with dolls and Johnny Seven Guns and Action Mans, and to have a sexual experience like that. Now, there's doctors and nurses. Look, I've heard loads of little kids go, "Oh yeah, we experimented when we was 10. We looked at each other's private parts." It wasn't that. It wasn't buggery. It wasn't a man. But it opened up. Ooh, I could even feel it now. It opened up a part of me that I wasn't emotionally, spiritually, mentally right for. So it's like...
And you were so young.
We're 4 or 5, 6.
And she would have been 16,
16, 17.
Yeah.
And it happened a few times. So it just opened up. And I think what the trauma come from, my parents was in the next room. So I've repeated not what she done to me to other people, but I've repeated that same energy in my sex life. And I don't mean I haven't raped anybody or anything, but my sex life become very dysfunctional. And it wasn't, I'd never forced myself. I'm not being funny, I don't mean to be arrogant or rude here, but I've never had a problem with finding girls, like all of us. So
Never. I love that. Just to be clear, one of his friends said, "Yeah, never, not once." So you never had a problem, but
drive. Put it this way.
But you think emotionally, at least.
Come on! It was crazy stuff.
Yeah.
So I cried out for my mum in my quietness of the echo of my life. Mum, where are you? I didn't realise I'd done that, but that lived with me to the day my mum died. Mum, where are you? It affected my relationship with women. I always had 2 women in my life. I'm sorry to say that. So one represented my mum, one represented the sex. Now I've never forced anyone to have sex, but the level of sexuality that I went to with drug taking was dysfunctional. And I'm not being funny, I didn't participate on my own with it, I participated with a woman with it, so it wasn't forced upon, it was an agreement, yeah? And I seem to be attracted to that sort of stuff, yeah? And I'm not proud of it, it happened. So probably a lot of people go, well, that's pretty normal, yeah?
What, to...
Just have dirty sex, Mike, bottom line.
Oh, okay, fine.
You know, but fueled with drugs.
Yeah.
But there was something that she'd done to me, and I'm not going to tell you what it was. There was something that she'd done to me that I repeated on myself for many, many years. And it wasn't nothing bad. I'm not going to, Mike, you're not going to get the truth out of me.
Yeah,
here.
no.
But it was an action that she participated that I copied. Yeah. So for me to copy that, it must have had it wasn't. I didn't used to do it to anybody else. I'm talking about myself. So I copied something that she taught me as a 4-year-old, 5-year-old kid, and it was to do with a sexual action. It was to do with masturbating. Yeah, and it continued in my life. So when I say when I was in therapy over it and I was in denial that it happened, the influence stayed with me sexually on myself till most of my life. So it had an effect, Michael. And I'm not blaming anybody. I'm not accusing anybody. I'm not trying to make anyone feel bad. But it affected me terribly. And it gave me a card that I didn't want. I didn't need it with the mad dad I had and the ancestral stuff that came into me. This was the last thing I needed. And it was that. And it wasn't... I mean, I've heard some sexual abuse that was way beyond what I experienced. But for a 5 or 6 year old kid to participate in something like that against his will... But I'll be honest with you, after the second or third time, I enjoyed it. That was the insanity of it. As a young boy.
Yeah, you mentioned that in the book. There was almost this weird, again, duality or oxymoron of it being you being fearful but fearless, and it fascinates me. This running theme throughout that. Mike, can I ask?
It's the new Joe Rogan, isn't it? It's the new Joe Rogan.
Well, let's see.
No, we're going to proclaim that in front of the audience. This is the new Joe Rogan.
Yeah.
Mike Rogan. When did you first tell anyone about it?
That's a terrific question. I think I told only one person. It sort of flitted around a little bit. But I first told someone who I trust probably about 30 years ago. But as I got in...
So you didn't tell anyone for...
No, I didn't tell...
30 odd years, you didn't tell a soul?
My parents... No.
Not a soul for decades?
No.
Fucking hell.
And then...
That's a common trait with people who suffer abuse.
Is it, Mike?
Yeah. I've you know, did you hear about this documentary about all these football coaches who used to use it as a weapon?
Yeah, I did.
And that was fascinating. That the common trait was always they were so frozen by it that they just lock it in, and it came out 30 years later. And obviously, people close to them are devastated.
Yeah.
Did you ever wonder why it was, on a personal level, why there was that need to hold it in, or why it went that way? Why it took so long?
I suppose what it is, Mike, because I didn't look dysfunctional. In fact, I weren't a bad-looking kid. So you would never look at me and think, oh, he's damaged. But I was. And I don't know what it is in the production of child, boy, man. But we have to grow, you don't go from being 2 to being 10. Each year in our lives, something happens to the growth of the being. Yeah. So I lost years. It affected my growth. Yeah. And I don't know why, but that's why I believe in God, Mike. Something kept me going because I had all this stuff running about in me that I used to really dislike. It was mind altering, and I used to. So what I'd done, I learned to do things to change the way that I felt. Now, I'm not sure how I done it, but I always had that sort of old-fashioned martyr. Keep your mouth shut, no matter what. Now, whether I was taught that or was it instilled in me, I don't know. But I suppose the shame of it. Then I became quite, and I don't really want to be talking about this, but I will. I became quite sexual at a very young age. So maybe from the ages of 6 to 14, I thought, it's all right. Maybe, I don't know.
Didn't even think much of it.
Maybe no.
Didn't acknowledge it, yeah.
No. But something happened that shocked me. I'm not going to explain that. But I then started to, when I started to act out on it, the affairs that I had, they were beautiful women, Michael. But when I went into therapy over it, and this is not a cop-out, they said, if you think about it, the girls that you've had affairs with, they were very close to you. it was very dangerous, and it was behind closed doors. That was my abuser. So the affairs that I had was very similar. They were very close to me, they were very dangerous, and they was behind. So I repeated behaviour.
Dangerous being often a partner of someone, a friend of yours, for example.
Yeah.
And that's the danger aspect. Close to you, you got to know them before anything sexual would happen.
They were my friends.
Yeah.
The girls were my friends and their partners were my friends. So am I proud of that? No. So the first affair I had a breakdown. And I remember seeing the abuser. I was walking behind her. And because I knew her, I'm not going to tell you it is
the woman who abused you when you were younger.
Yeah.
Around the time that you had your first affair.
No, I'd had an affair with a girl. Yeah.
Okay.
And when the affair became alive in my.
Fine. Coincidentally, you saw your abuser.
Not coincidentally, it doesn't matter. I'm not going to get into that. I saw the abuser. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm walking behind her, and I'd had a breakdown because I had this affair. A terrible breakdown because I hated what I'd done. I hated myself, and I suppose you lose popularity. It was big in the community. It caused murders. You know, the poor guy, my wife, and I couldn't live with myself. I hated myself, and I'd exposed myself, and I was the person what was involved with my early days. I was walking down the road. I was in her company. I knew her, and I remember saying in my head, "This is your fucking fault." And I'm going back a long time ago, and I lost control. I lost my way, and the denial of it probably suits. Denial's good. Well, it's bad, but it's good for a period of time. Yeah. And when I went into recovery, I opened it up. But what the man told me, and my therapist, he said, you must never speak to this person without professional help because you don't know what it will do to them. So I always sort of... what I wish I'd have done, Mike, is shared it with one or two people, but I've now put it in a book. I've shared it because I started to share it as to say, yeah, but don't you know I've been abused? That's why I've done that. And that was a bit of a cop-out. Although it was instrumental in my behaviour, that it was sort of a bit of a release valve. Maybe I could justify my own behaviour with it. But at the end of the day, it may have been the sort of injection of dysfunction from sexual behaviour that impregnated in me. So it was the cause. It's like taking your first fix. You know, they say one is too many, 1,000 not enough.
Yeah.
So I do firmly believe that it had a massive influence on my behaviour. When I got into therapy, it was long after that, and it was explained to me that it's really badly affected me because of my behaviour.
Also people talk about the integral years to your behaviour, and I think it's something like 3 years old when you're a conscious being through to about 11, 12 are such integral years to your general adult life.
Well, there you go. You've answered it in one line.
Yeah, yeah. So obviously, you know, we talked, 5, 6 years old. And then as a kid, you grew up in Stockport, but then moved out to Epsom, is that right?
No, we moved to New Malden at first.
Yeah.
In sleepy New Malden, it was, we moved opposite the vicar, Mr. Chart. I don't know if you know the Clampett family, or do you know the Clampetts?
No. But I mean, tell us, yeah.
Google it.
Okay.
Everyone Google it and you'll find out who the Clampetts are. But we was a bit like the Clampett family. They was from... that was a great series. Do you remember the Clampetts? Hillbillies. Brilliant.
Cartoon.
No, it was a program that was on, and they struck oil and they become rich, and they,
What year?
Dear, it's
before our time, Mike.
long time ago, not before
time.
his time.
Yeah, you as well.
Have you Sam? Have you got it on there?
Yeah.
Is there a song on there you could play?
Let's have a look.
Oh, I've got it up on Google, but yeah.
Yeah.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, this was the Beverly Hills Hillbillies.
Yeah.
The Beverly
I
Hillbillies.
remember them.
You see, movie star.
Can we see that?
There's a great song that goes with it.
Hold on. Might do it again one more time.
That's the Clampets. That was briefly the Emmets in Reigate.
Yeah,
Right,
in New Malden.
It's New Malden. So you went there, and what? How old are you at this point?
I'm 6, 7.
Okay. And I remember you saying not you saying, but you mentioned in the book you went to a better school, maybe a bit more, where you were the odd one out, right?
Yeah, I was the odd one out because I was a Cockney kid.
Right, and everyone else was a bit more.
Well, I wouldn't say they were sort of middle class posh, but they'd been brought up in Surrey, in New Malden, and there was an element of wealth there, but there was an element of sort of just I would say like just nice detached houses. There was a lot of policemen who lived there. Yeah. There was doctors, and there was sort of nice kids, and they come from nice homes, and they didn't really know.
Very, very stable families, I guess.
Well, I'm not sure if they were stable.
Or they at least appeared on the outside.
It seemed to be a cleaner way of life, but whether they were stable or not, I mean, the Royal. I'm not against the Royals. I love the Royals, but they got the best houses in the world, but they weren't stable, was they? So stability comes from the being itself, not the environment, I believe. But they seemed on the outside to be cool, yeah, or normal, to coin a phrase.
Yeah.
So
you were at school there, because I remember. Is this the bit where you started selling sandwiches for?
No, that was the next part of my schooling.
Okay. You're a bit older.
Well, I was 14, yeah, but I was 12, 13, 14 then.
So I've got to say, just for chronological order, there's a bit in the book that said some geezer used to pay you 20p so he could watch you
kiss the girl, yeah.
You were 12 years old.
I was 11. 10, 11 in my last year at primary school.
That's an entrepreneur, guys. That's an entrepreneur.
And his dad was a big copper.
Yeah.
I think he was from Scotland Yard, his dad. His name was, I won't say what his name was, but he was in my school, and the little girl, it was hilarious. And I just thought kissing girls was normal. Playing with myself, I thought was normal. But I've spoken to people, if they go, this is what? We never had sex till we was 14 or 15 or 16. I said, oh, did you really? I was actually early days. So it was just something that I thought was like reading the B-note.
Yeah.
And it was exciting. You got something, not that I was sort of whatever, but there was a small excitement attached to it. And the smaller the excitement as a young kid, the bigger the hole became, because it wasn't correct. I wasn't learning anything that was good or fruitful or stood me in good stead. It was I wanted to put my hand down girls' knickers at a very young age.
Don't charge me anything now.
Yeah. So you must have been what? You must have been just about 12.
I was 11, and I said every time I kiss her, I want a penny. Yeah.
You said to her? You said to him?
Said to him, yeah. She kissed me 20 times.
You got 20p.
Yeah, but it's true story.
That's what I mean.
And it was in the bike shed.
What?
But it's really funny. The name of the teacher who slept with me.
This is fucking classic.
This is true.
Yeah, no, I know. It's
the
true.
name
Can I tell you something? When I was reading the book, I couldn't stop fucking laughing when I heard this. Especially the fact that the kid's dad was a copper, and it all went around school.
Went pear-shaped.
Yeah.
But the teacher was called Mrs. Newbegin, and I was reading about her. And there was where you lived. I've joined this little thing, and her name came up. I was reading it on Facebook the other day, but she said, she couldn't do it today. So I've seen the guy and his mum at the door, and behind the desk where you used to sort of put your you used to pay for your school dinners, and there'd be a register. There was a book room there. And she called. I think I pushed the lid of my desk up so I could hide behind it. I thought, oh no. And she'd obviously it had a terrible weekend. Obviously frightened that I might hit him or something, or whatever. I don't know what he thought. And he didn't bring the money to school. Told his mum. She's come up to school. She's told Mrs. Newbegin. And I got slippered in front of the whole class, which was it's true. She slippered me in front of the class,
Yeah.
which she couldn't get away with today. She did. I don't think she told the class what it was for. I suppose it was just like doctors and nurses, really. But it weren't to me. You know, I was serious about it. It wanted me a bit of dough and all.
Yeah.
So, but that was that. And it just progressed. It was
Because you lost your virginity like quite early, didn't you, as well?
I lost my virginity very early, yeah. I suppose...
Which I found quite unusual, because, or maybe not, I guess it's the extremity of your personality.
I was about 12 or 13
12,
when I sort of... But I don't know if... I don't know.
Would you call it... Would you?
I
Yeah,
wouldn't say it was sex.
But it was...
But, you know, I penetrated a young girl.
Yeah.
But I can't really... It was just like as if I was having... Without being disrespectful to women, because I love women. I got some of the best women friends in the world. And the Bible very strong on its women. But it was just something that I thought, you're done. I thought it was normal. And she was older than me, this girl. There was a couple of them. I used to get love bites and all that. My dad used to go potty. And before I knew it, this adolescent 6-year-old was now 12, 13, 14. And what I'd learned, which I shouldn't have learned, become very, very apparent in my life. And I was just always had a girlfriend, or always was searching for birds, or always getting in trouble over women. And it wasn't until I got mature and older that I didn't even realise then. You know, I was very sort of immature in that. I missed that growing from the 4 to the 11-year-old.
Yeah.
And I know it sounds weird, but I'm very brutal and honest about it. But it's plagued me, Mike. It's plagued me. It's cost me some beautiful friends, some beautiful women. And I'm not just saying beautiful because they're pretty. I'm talking about beautiful souls, good friends of mine. And, you know, I've made my amends to them today. And I wasn't I don't want to sound egotistical, I'm a bad-looking kid. But it was... The reason I was doing it, because I was very broken and I needed affirmation from somewhere. And that's where I found my affirmation. I didn't find it in the Spanish class or the maths class. I found it in that. I wish I didn't. I wish it hadn't happened to me. But maybe there's a reason why it happened to me.
Well, it was clearly the women aspect was clearly a big influence on your early days, which shaped your sort of adult life. The other thing is obviously your dad. And I was wondering, like, do you remember the first time you realised your dad was, should we say, I mean, he did criminal activity? Do you remember that moment? Was it a distinct moment that happened?
No, it evolved.
It sort of just evolved.
It evolved. I see him have it's in the book. I see him have one terrible fight. Well, I didn't see him have a fight. I see the aftermath of the fella fall against the car. I was about 6 or 7 then. But I found a diary of my dad's. It's here somewhere. In 1963 it was. And every entry is about me. I couldn't believe it. It's my sister as well. But it was all Michael was with me. He used to write a diary every day in case he got nicked and he could use it. No, I was there that day. It was just the madness of his mind. He wrote a diary every day nearly for 50 years. And I've got one in there and it's all about me. Michael this, Michael that, and I thought, my God, I didn't really get it. And he had his own dysfunction. He had his own bad ways around relationships. So I picked that up from him. I know I did, and I think impregnated with this sort of abuse. I wasn't hiding for nothing, and I wasn't a bad-looking kid, but it created a real dysfunctional madness in me. You can't grow up hating yourself.
Yeah, because when was?
But I did.
Yeah, but your first run-in with the police was quite young, wasn't it?
Yeah, I first got nicked when I was 13.
Yeah.
Of having a fight down in a place called Norburton. And I don't know why I got put down as the ringleader. But even then, I beat all the champions in the area at fighting. And then I got beat up by someone who was a rugby player called Jelly Carter. So it was that opposite again. He smashed me right on the chops. As I fell over, a dog bit me up the arse in the park. My dad was devastated. I went home with a big black eye. Yeah. And he said, look, if you can't do him, hit him over the head with a piece of wood. My dad, I was 30, what charge you have? And then I had a fight with 2 other kids who had a naughty reputation, and I had them over. So there was always that going on. There was always that fear and fearless way of Michael. But, you know, You know, as I'm sitting here talking to you now, I wish I could go back and, well, I have done therapy. I've gone back and loved him and said, come on, it's all right. Because if I continue in the vein that I'm continuing in now, that's why I really am into this Jesus stuff. Because I want to get to the stage where I am getting to the stage where what matters is what matters rather than what I think matters, if that makes sense. So what matters is love. What matters is kindness. What matters is peace. What matters, I said it early days, is my relationships. Is it honourable? Do I have integrity? Because that never grew in me. I didn't understand all that crap. I just think it was crap. Today it's beautiful. To be, you know, the Bible says about love thy neighbour. Do I love my neighbour? How can I love my neighbour? I don't even love myself. I do nowadays, I'm talking about in the past. So I used to think my neighbours was my enemies. I'm at it. I don't trust none of them. And I used to really suffer with bad rage, Michael. And it was that traumatized child screaming. But when you're 30 and 40, and I had volatile relationships with women, you know, I used to have fights with women. I'm not talking about beat up. I mean, it weren't always nice, but I had volatile relationships. And it seems to me...
They're very toxic.
Yeah, and it seems to me the girls I was with used to like attacking me as well, and I sort of liked it. I've been stabbed in the finger by a girl. I've been stabbed in the head by a girl. My relationship was a bit like Italian relationships, but it was all, and then it'd be eye sex, bang, bang, bang. Oh, blah, blah, blah. That was the make-up thing.
It reminds me, not quite, but I dated a Southern Italian girl. It was very like that. Angry at you the 1 minute, then certain intensity the next.
And I think girls, you know, I'm not. It doesn't exist today. That stuff doesn't exist today. And it's quite private and personal. So I want to be careful what we put out there. So I'm just sitting here telling you. But, you know, I've never put a woman in an home where they've been battered and bruised and beaten up. But I had very high... And I don't mean to be rude. It was an excitement, I think, for them and all. But love is love, and that's not love, that's just toxic sex. But I was always in trouble with women. I was always having pots thrown at me and kettles and flower vases, and I used to love it. and it was just part of the game. And it was that traumatized child. A traumatized child could throw his bottle out the pram, yeah? Or break his action man up. But when you're still traumatized at 40, you don't break action men up no more or throw your bottle out. The trauma is exactly the same emotion as a 4-year-old kid, and I'm being honest with you. My levels of trauma after that happened to me was, I remember screaming, Mom! I hated it. But so today, you know, I mean, all my ex-girlfriends, and I'm not going to make that, but I have got quite a number of ex-girlfriends. They're all my pals.
Yeah, that surprised me, to be honest.
All of them, barring one.
Because considering the toxicity of what you talked about in your book, it was quite shocking that you actually...
They're all my mates.
...made amends, or at least, you know, have that friendship.
I love every single one of them today, and they love me. I mean, they was at my mother's funeral, and I don't think it was like, oh, I'm the big shot, I could nick all the birds. I think it was all mutual. I think I gravitated to broken women, and I'm not trying to be a big shot. I love women. I've got some of the most loveliest girlfriends today, not ex-lovers. I'm friends with women today that I really love. I really think women are excellent. I think they're brilliant. And in the Bible, Mary Magdalene, Mary, the mother of Jesus, Mary Magdalene, if you go in the Old Testament, they were powerful women. Whether you believe it or not is not my business. But they're described as very... You know, I think for a woman to give birth, imagine giving birth. Let's have it right back in the day. Well, I mean, I've watched my lovely ex-wife give birth to my children, and it's a tricky one. It's a tricky one. Do you understand? It's incredible. The political side of it was Spain didn't renew the treaty with England about sending criminals back to the UK because of over the argument about, you can Google it, about Gibraltar.
Gibraltar, yeah.
So for a couple
So that's why you felt safe there. That was the general, and quite a lot of lads.
Well, everyone went there because of that reason.
And absconding, just for clarity for audiences, essentially when you've got a court date or you're being chased, or?
Well, we call it going on your toes.
Okay.
And that's sort of a London sort of thing for when you abscond from going to court because you think you're going to prison.
Mm.
So I absconded, and and it was I really didn't sort of express it in the book, but yesterday I sort of met with the son of the man who drove me in the car chase with the police. His dad was the reason why I absconded, because we was in a lot of trouble.
Yeah. So this is the event leading up to what in London leading up to.
So what happened was this: I was in a police chase, with this guy, and he was wanted by the police. Yeah, and he was wanted by the police for a weapon, some drugs, and he was a beautiful man, this geezer, but he was a very broken man, very misunderstood. And I think I was the only man he trusted. And it was really funny. I see his son yesterday for the first time in maybe 35 years. No, 30 years.
He was wanted at the time. You weren't.
No.
And so what happened? You were just driving around and you noticed the coppers?
No. We was up to no good. We was selling bits. We were selling drugs, and he come to me. We was together all the time, me and this boy, and it's sort of seeing his son. It opened my heart again to him, and because it was hid away, and he came to me. We got some coke, and the police knew half of his number plate, and as we was known to the police in the area, via my dad really, because we was in Battersea, and the police drove past, and I was about to get in my car, and he was in his car, and it don't matter because it's years ago now, but he hid the cocaine in the steering wheel. I'm not going to tell you how much was there, Mike, so don't ask. He hid the steering wheel he hid the cocaine in the steering. He was a very clever boy, actually. He hid the steering wheel in the casing of the steering wheel. It was only a 1.4 Fiesta, and that was his little car. I had not because of any other reasons, but he was driving about with that car because it was a humble car and he was wanted by the police. And as a criminal, he was a very dangerous man, but so misunderstood because he had a heart of gold, this kid. And I feel that he was one of the kids who he drew the short straw in life, this kid. Mm. And that's why I loved him. I feel very sad talking about him right now. Anyway, as he goes to drive off, the police look at me, and I've had a few beers. And I said, hold up, I can't remember what I said. I said, should I jump in the motor with you? That mob. He said, yeah, come on. And we was in Battersea, and I don't know if you know Battersea, but Northcote Road Market. And do you know, like them big hills in San Francisco that you see, and you see the police cases, and I'm not saying it was like that, but it was similar. It was a smaller version of San Francisco. Okay. So there was about 10 roads that come down from the hill. So it's like a hill and a dyke, and the dyke's Northcote Road. It goes into a valley, and then you go up again. So every road you cut across, there's 10 roads that run parallel, so you can see everything that goes down when you go across the 3 major roads that cut these 10 roads in thirds, let's say. Does that make sense?
Yeah, yeah.
So
it's a grid basically, so it's easier to.
That's it. Yeah. So we had a shop. I had a shop there. It was a front. It was we used to call it upper class brass, and it was a bathroom shop. And I used to sell Edwardian and Victorian bathrooms in there.
That's a great name.
Yeah, upper class brass it was called. And it was all shenanigans.
Oh, that's really immature of me to find that funny.
No, that's cool. I quite like that. Though.
It's fucking brilliant.
Great name, in upper class
it's
brass.
Great, yeah.
So, no disrespect at all, but that's what it was called. So we come out of there, wallop, I've got the police guys, I've got to get in his... I've got to get in my car, I've seen the old bills, I'm going, hold up, I'll get in with him. Anyway, as we spin round to go down one of the San Francisco roads onto the Northcote, as we go across the Northcote Road, I've got him, I can't remember what I said, but I can imagine this is what I said. It's on us, let's be careful. All of a sudden, up they go. Now they're lurking like the cat's going to catch the mouse. So they're... Boom, I've seen another one. I said, listen, blah, blah, blah. Anyway, he could drive, this boy. Oh, could he drive? Now we're in a 1.4 Fiesta. Out he goes onto the Bolingbroke Road. And there's a helicopter up there. They've come from everywhere. They've now obviously know maybe who it might be. I'm not sure about that, but there's an influence of violence. So when there's an influence of violence, they come firm-handed. So he went wallop onto the north. He'd come off the Bolingbroke Road, turned right into Nightingale Lane, which goes over Wandsworth Town Station, and then it goes right up to the top towards, you're going towards Tooting Mentalone. But along that bit of Wandsworth Common, there's all lovely restaurants. He's on the pavement. Oh, I can't believe it. I'm sitting in the back of the car. Now, part of the consignment of the cocaine, Mike, don't ask me how much was there, because I'm not going to tell you.
Not going to ask.
He's on the seat as he's going to give it to someone on the way home. So I take my shoes and socks off, put the socks on my hands, I clean the bag.
Right, okay, yeah, to cut no fingerprints, right?
Oh, hopefully, I'm
I'm
trying to get rid of that, but there's stuff in the steering wheel. So, whatever. We're trying to think practical.
Yeah.
So we go up to the lights. Now we've got about 2 or 3 cars, maybe 4. Bump, he's hitting cars, I'm in the back like that. We wind up on this new estate. It was they'd built houses there, these sort of semi-big houses, what they build, new builds. So I know the back doubles, round there. Now, I don't know how we've managed it. I think because he drove so superbly, we've got some breathing space. I said, get into the mental home, and we're out the car, we're going to run. I said, get into the mental home, I know the way through, yeah? So we're now 70-30 in our favour, yeah? We go through a person's front garden, this massive front garden, and there's a young guy, and he was rubbing down the front of a rowing boat. He was on this bench like that, and he's rubbing it down. All of a sudden, we come through the fence. He's looked, he's rolled off. We've gone through the other garden fence. I said, hold on, and I've gone wallop, and I've thrown a coke. Because we're now surrounded by this fence that's the fence for the mental one, yeah? So the bit I throw catches the top of the fence and drops down, but I don't see that. So he reverses about 40 yards back, 40, 50 yards, maybe. And then, so he said, this fence, it was about 20, 30 foot long, and it went in a shape like, it was like a L. So I said, go on, or whatever. Now, every 6 foot was a concrete post. It was corrugated with a concrete post. His aim was diabolical. Well, he hit the bullseye, actually. He hit this concrete post right in the middle. We was doing about 40 mile an hour. 40 maybe. We're going at speed.
Yeah.
Bang! As he's hit it, the car has gone up like that. He's gone through the window screen. Bless you, Wayne. And his bone pops out of his ooter. The steering wheel's embedded in his chest. It's gone through like that, which I believe may have been the saving grace, because it like Constantined it.
Yeah.
And I'm in the back of the car, so I go forward like that. Bang! I dislodge this knee, and I have internal bleeding in my left ankle. As the car's gone, I've looked at him and I can remember this. Oh, it was awful. Bless his heart. He's gone to try and run. I've gone to try and run. and we're finished. He's gone over, I've gone over, police are there. The mother of the son who was messing about with the boat, I've got 2 inflatable things on my legs to take the pain away. The ambulances are there. Bah, she's hit me with a stick. She's hit him with a stick. Posh lady, how dare you? We go down St George's Hospital. They don't want us in the hospital. They say the only way he can come out if he can move his knee. The police got this stuff, went bollock, got my knee like that. It was awful. We wound up in the police station that night, the 2 of us. We go to court the following morning. I'm in a wheelchair and on crutches, and he's got his arms in plaster of Paris, and he's got big black eyes, and we're in court like this. Now, I don't think up until then they'd found what was in the car. It was in such a mess, the car. And I think they was probably just satisfied. Maybe, I think so. Because we get remanded in Brixton. We're on no man's land again between A and B wing, and we're going into a place they call Fraggle Rock. It's the hospital wing, and it's noisy. It's not nice, and we're both in trouble. I'm in this wheelchair, so's he. We do look well. Anyway, it's about 8 o'clock at night, and they're going to take us up, and they shout out, "Emmett!" My prison number. Bow. My dad's gone to judging chambers, and he's got me bound with a security. I pulled up a friend of mine's mother, put the surety up, I think, of 20 or 30 grand on her house. They wheel me out of Brixton, and as I go through, because I can't go through the doors that you go out, they have to open the doors where the van goes out, because I'm in the wheelchair, and there's no wheelchair access. And who's standing at the other side of the door is my dad. "You mug," he went, "what are you doing with these people?" I didn't have to be active. I had the sauce. I didn't have to run around being mad. Anyway, cut a long story short, I'm out of prison. I go home. The following day, I can sort of hobble about a little bit and go and see a mate of mine. My mate of mine used to be the archer for the English cross-country archery. I can't say his name, and first name's Steve.
Okay.
So because he was part of the English team, he knew real top physiotherapists, doctors, everything, stress-related, body-related. So he sent me to see this geezer down in Hampton, in Surrey, at the Scilly Isles, and he said, "You got internal bleeding." Anyway, I had some stuff done on it, blah, blah, blah. So within 2 or 3 months, I was sort of able to move about a little bit. So I decided you could get yearly passports then. So I got a yearly passport. I found out my court date. It's not like it used to be. I had 3 months I found out the court case, I believe. And I went and see my mate's mother. And I timed the flight perfectly. I timed it on a Sunday night. So I went round to see her. I said, "Listen, tonight..." Now, if this hadn't worked, we'd have had to give her the money. Maybe it weren't 30 grand. I can't remember what it was.
Don't worry.
But that don't matter.
No, it's not too relevant. So
no.
Don't worry.
But whatever. So, maybe more like 10 or something. I can't remember. And I'm normally good at things.
I mean, listen, enough to put up part of your house. That's
Absolutely. Yeah, but I'm funny about the truth. I'm weird with it. I don't want to... So anyway, I say to Jean, go to the police station at this time, right? Time I'm leaving London, it was. I said, go into the police station, it's exactly here. If anything goes wrong, the money will be sorted out for you.
Yeah.
So, got her own amends, that woman, actually, bless her. So, excuse me, quite emotional this. So anyway, I'm going to quicken up here. So all of a sudden, she goes to the police station, he's absconded, so she goes late at night Sunday. I've had word that Michael Emmett's going to abscond. They go to my house at 6 o'clock in the morning, I'm gone, yeah? So it looked real. I go to Lanzarote, because it's Christmas, with my wife, Amy, and some friends of mine. Then I go into Spain, because you go to Marbella because there's no extradition rights, and I've gone down to Spain, and I'm in Spain.
Yeah. How old are you at this point?
I'm 24.
Okay.
And then I got up.
And you had you done any time in the Nick before that?
Yeah, I'd been on remand twice.
Fine.
I was on remand when I was 20, and remand once, and this was no.
So you're 24, Lanzarote to Marbella sort of thing.
I wasn't perturbed about going to prison.
Yeah.
Because there's an old saying: if you can't do the time, don't do the crime, and it's a real one. So I'm now out in Spain. I get up to mischief down there.
Yeah. Did you have?
I don't want to speak about that today.
Okay. Fine.
I have to think about that for you, Mike. I hope you don't mind.
No, not at all.
And because that's another interesting story. But I've got to put it in words. I want to think about that. And what happened then was me and Martin, we was arguing. That's what we was talking about, wasn't it?
Yeah.
That was the question, wasn't it?
Well, you went to Marbella. Obviously, I guess you got set up there to some extent.
I got really looked after when I got there. My dad knew everyone down there, and he had a reputation that, he was a tough boy, my dad.
So it's quite easy to, I guess, start away life.
Well, I just they got me a home straight away. A man called Henry Kennedy, Freddie Foreman was there. All that, you Google it. They was called the famous five. There was John May. Google their names and you'll get them. And Ronnie Everett, John Mason, Ronnie Knight, Clifford Sachs. They was all there. Although I didn't know them that well, but I knew Freddie Foreman. Henry Kennedy was my dad's mate. There was old Jackie Kramer, who was fantastic. Jack was beautiful. I love Jack. When he moved me into a flat up at the back of the old town, and it was when Sky first came out, and you weren't allowed to have this. You had to send someone over to England, and they'd send you a card, because you weren't allowed to have Sky abroad. And so the next door to me, he had a little disc, this geezer. So Jack said, I know what I'll do. I'm a bit of an electrician. He weren't. He said, but I'll plug you into him. I said, all right, go on, Jack. And the geezer caught us. He's on the geezer's balcony plugging in my Sky, so it was all fun. And then there was stuff that went on with Jackie Kramer, God rest his soul, he's dead now, Jack. He was a cracker, mate of my dad's. Oh, he was such a lovely man, Jack. And then there was people down there I knew, from my there was a family member of mine there with his kids. He was a beautiful man. Oh, he was a beautiful man. And then there was some there was a little firm there who was, they were wanted down there over some stuff with allegedly to do with my dad, I'm not sure. So there was all that going on, and so it was like home from home. But I felt different. I was an addict. I was lonely, and as much as I was trying to get a fix off I missed my mum. It was mad. That's just how crazy it was. I missed my mum. I missed Tracy. I missed my daughter. Like everyone else would, but I was always that sort of melodramatic. It was always a bit dramatic for me. And I used to get drunk and stoned and phone up and cry down the phone. But then I'd be out the following day. That's the trauma child. The following day, I'd be acting like a lunatic, fighting. I had a very famous fight down there with a guy called Eddie Ayoff. And Eddie fought Bob Foster for the Eliminator for the light heavyweight championship of the world. And I shaped up to him. Me and my brother was there, Martin was there, his friends, lovely Adam, lovely Francis. And bless you guys. And we was at a place called the Artola. And what used to happen in the Artola on a Sunday, all the chaps used to go, all the people who was wanted. Not only everyone who was wanted, but Marbella then in 1984 was different. It was more like a village, yeah. And so Estepona, which seems really close to Puerto Banús now, then it seemed miles away. So Marbella to Puerto Banús seemed miles. Everything seemed miles away. And it's not. It's as you grow older, you realise the law of gravity changes when you get older. And so we was there, And there was young birds about, and I've got these young kids with me, my brother and his friends, and we go to the Artola. And what the Artola used to be, it was a 9-hole golf course with a hotel, and they used to do roast pork, roast beef, all the Sunday trappings. There used to be an Irish geezer get up and sing, and everyone used to meet there of a Sunday. All the chaps, all the gangsters used to be there. So it was quite exciting. And there was a guy there called, there was a wrestler. His name was Joe Cornelius. And he was my dad's mate. And his son was running this place with a big scaffolder fella from Yorkshire, from Liverpool, who looked like David Botham, the cricket player, and Eddie Ayoff, the fighter. So we're all there, we're all singing old London Cockney songs. There's a bit of cocaine appeared, there's a few drinks, there's a few joints going on, there's all pretty girls, and everyone's having a groovy time, yeah? So something's happened. I only argued, it says 3 times in there, I argued with my brother 3 times in his existence, yeah? And twice was in Marbella, and once was another time when we didn't really have an argument. And I loved that boy like there was no tomorrow. Seriously, there was no. It's not a figment of my imagination. I can't say it about me dad, but I can say it about my brother. He was the nicest man I've ever met in my life. I can't say it about myself neither, but I can say it about him and my mother. There was 2 of the most nicest people I've ever met in my life. I sincerely mean that. So I was blessed. So there's a bit of dialogue going on. We've had a few words outside, and this Ian Botham character comes out because they think we've left without paying the bill. Well, we haven't. My friends are still in there. But I think there was a little bit of animosity there because they was like young boys and these other guys like the girls, they was hairdressers and they sort of half liked these young chaps. So I think that was a bit, and they didn't know who we were. Anyway, as he's come out, this geezer, he said something to my brother. Now, you're going to have an argument with my brother and I'm there, you're going to make a mistake. I don't care who you are. Anyway, I've hit the geezer on the chin. And then Eddie comes out, the boxer. So all the faces get in a circle, and he starts, Eddie. He goes ping, 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 and he knocks the 3 of them over. My brother, young Adam, and Francis. All the gangsters are outside, and they're saying to me, "Listen, you can't do this because if we get arrested for anything else other than what we're arrested for in the UK, they can ship us back for being undesirables." Yeah. Now I'm not public enemy number 1, but they're in trouble, but I'm not. I suppose I was looking at a bit of bird, you know. And anyway, Eddie, he's whacked Adam, he's whacked Francis, and then he's hit me brother, and I've seen the mist has come down. So I said, "Come on, I'll have a fight with you." Now I've hit his mate who's on the floor. He's a bit bruised and buckled, and now he's up, and now Eddie's up, and Eddie's done 3 of us. Anyway, I shape up to Eddie, Rick, you can't fight a man who was a contender for the title. You can't. You're silly. I thought I could. And I think even Freddie Foreman went, "You sure?" I said, "I'll have a straightener with him." And they formed a sort of circle. Anyway, I went to kick him up the nuts. And he caught me with one, right? He was Welsh, this geezer. He bought it from the Welsh Valley. He's gone wallop. And he's hit me on the USA. Broke me out nose. It was funny, actually. Yes. As I go on,
just also like the way you said you brought it from the Welsh Valley, like it was fucking that hard.
It was a naughty one. It was a naughty one. But as I've gone on the floor, someone shouts out, "Wales 4, England 0." That angered me. Yeah. So I get up and I dive on his back and I put my legs between his legs. And my brother was a non-violent boy. Yeah. So I said, "Mark, kick him. Kick him." He said, "I can't." I said, "Mark, kick him." Anyway, he kicked him up the privates and he got stronger, this guy. He got stronger. I felt his testicles in his neck, but he threw me off like a rag doll. Anyway, it continues the fight, but I don't want to glorify that. But the following day I get summoned by the sort of, by the faces, to sort of, you know, in a kind way it was. They come and said to me...
What, no more settle the score sort of thing?
Yeah, you can't do this, you're with us. I was with them in heart, you know, they said, "Look, you're down here, your dad's our friend," and that. And
I guess don't shake the water, because it's...
Absolutely. Yeah. So they make an arrangement for me to go and see Eddie the following day. And I remember looking through, and I mean, we were all damaged. We were damaged goods, but so was he. I was highly delighted when I see his face. He had a big cauliflower ear. He had a big thing on his face. And I think he was a little bit...
Well, it goes back to the ego thing. You wanted to... He had status in a certain world, and you wanted to...
Maybe.
Prove the point as much as when you said, I got done for 10 years. In that world, it was impressive. Same sort of thing, right?
Same sort of thing, yeah. There was a little bit of notoriety with it.
Yeah. Because was everybody...
So there's a punchline to this.
Go on, sorry.
There's a punchline to this.
Go ahead.
And it ends here.
Yeah.
So Fred arranges for us to go and see him. He felt a bit sorry. There was one guy who wasn't really a fighter. Not sorry for him, but it was Francis. He was non-offensive. They all were non-offensive. So, Fred said he's really apologetic for eating these young kids. So I send the young kid in to see if the ground's safe. I said, go and... So Eddie went, oh, boy, he was lovely, Eddie. So we all walk in. And he looked at me and I looked at him. I got two black eyes, big bloody nose. They're all bruised, my brother and all that. But so's he. And he said, I'm very sorry, boy, another Welshman.
Yeah.
He said, but someone kicked me up the bollocks and the bell went off. That's what he said. So that was that. And then we progressed and they went home. I'd just come back from doing some naughty stuff. I'd earned some money. And then they went home. This was in the spring of '85. And then my grandfather was diagnosed with cancer. My mother's father, lovely man called John Watkins. He was a beautiful man, John, an incredible man. He was a really lovely man, he was. So my mum sent Martin out to be with me when my grandfather died. And we've read it, you've got the information. And sadly, he died in a very sort of, it was a very brutal way. A lorry went over him in a car, and he was in a Panda. So there wasn't a lot really they could do with him. It was, I don't want to go too deep into it, but it was very sort of a nasty death, So I cried out to God before. So he drove to Marbella. Obviously he tried to get on the aeroplane and phoned up my mum, but his mum, all these things he couldn't get his money in the phone box. If he had done, he wouldn't have been there when that lorry went. All that sort of stuff.
All these small things in quick succession sort of led
Absolutely.
to... Yeah.
And so
obviously it started with the fight. You two had a bit of a Barney, right?
We had an argument, yeah. That night we had an argument. We'd been out all that night, and we'd been out taking cocaine, and he wasn't really a cocaine head. And we went back and we started to argue about my father. My father was seeing another woman. It was quite painful. But, my father had a child out of that relationship, so something, come from that. And she's my sister, and bless her, and bless her mother. My dad had feelings for these people, and it just happens now. She's my sister, but because it was related to quick succession after my brother died, there was a lot of anger and resentment. Martin was only 6 months in his grave when my younger sister was born, so it was hurtful. It was painful. I'm not saying he meant it like that. But it was quite painful and it was quite ruthless. And my mother, I'm not sure my mother was taken into consideration. Well, not at all. And I don't judge my dad, I don't judge the woman. So we was arguing about that, but we were sort of agreeing to disagree. He left, and I went and got him by the boring, and I bought him back, gave him some, I don't know why they put that £1,000, I gave him half of it in there. I suppose it's just good for a book, but that was the truth, so I must have said that because it is the truth. And he came back. I remember him taking the car and I heard, but what he had to do, he never had his passport. And my friend who I'd been out with that night, we'd had a bit of drink and some coke and that. And, it was glitzy Marbella, or July the 29th, it was baking hot. My mate left his door open, Martin went in, and now if my mate would have locked his door, Martin couldn't have got in. He'd had to knock on the door, but he got in, got his passport. But he came back, and I was asleep, and he left a note there. That's when he left. And I think he got to Marbella, and on the way back, probably, I think it was 11 o'clock the following morning, or something like that, I think it was. You know, he'd had probably no sleep. He was rushing to get back to me. His girlfriend was 3 months pregnant with his son. And, tragic. And wallop, that was it.
And he died at 21, is that right?
He was 21 years of age. He was 21 in the December, and he died in the July, so he was nearly going towards his 22nd birthday. But he was a beautiful boy. Oh,
I remember in the book. Sorry, I just want to touch on this a little bit.
You're cool, Mike.
The thing that really stood out for me on that particular section was your dad essentially blamed you for his death.
Yeah.
I mean, what was that like? Because you had so much trauma and such a disjointed relationship with your father at this stage.
Well,
what was? Yeah. Did it just cause the rift even more, and then you distanced yourself for quite a few years, or? Because I remember you went back to England quite soon after that, right?
Yeah, I went
for the
back,
funeral.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then after that.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, Mike. It really separated us because, he arrived in Spain drunk. He abused the police, the passport control. He was with his dear friend Arthur Sutty, and I was really happy because I didn't realise, but Tracy was with him, and seeing Tracy was like, wow. And she was the mother of my children. I adored her, Tracy, bless her, and I still do in my own way today. And right, Madam Trace. And it's her being there made it. Anyway, we drove to the morgue, and it was really, really uncomfortable. And when the police went to the house in the night time, they thought it was me because it had to be Michael. It couldn't be Martin. He was the baby and the special one. It had to be me because I was the mad one. And it was just a shock to a community. Martin was a very beautiful boy, a popular boy. And my dad thought it was me. Then he blamed me for killing him in his drunken stupor. And then when we got in the morgue, it was terrible to look down to the coffin. It was a face and whatever. You could just see. And I pulled the sheet back. I shouldn't have pulled the sheet back from his face because they just showed us that eye. All they showed us was that, and it wasn't nice. And my dad wanted to get him out of the coffin, but it was so hurt. My dad just thought he wanted to hold his son for the last time. Now, if he'd have died of natural causes or it hadn't have been so brutal, I'd have supported my dad. And I said, get him out. He wants to hold his boy. It's his son. He wants to hold his boy. He's never going to hold him again. Let him hold him. I'd have supported him. But I saw that it was impossible. There was nothing really to cuddle or hold. It was bits of... It was awful. And maybe I'm sure that's true. And he turned on me. And the guy come running out. He said, I'll call the police. Tracy spoke a little bit of Spanish, broken Spanish. And she said, Mike, stop it. They're going to get you and the old man in trouble here. He went, get my fucking son out of that coffin. I want my son. And I was with him, but I knew I'd have made one with him otherwise. And then we went out and he said, this is your fault. You killed him. Me. So we had 3 or 4 days of hardship. We rolled about on the floor. He pretended to have an heart attack. He was in love with this other woman, so he was distraught. He didn't know his elbow from his arse. But I don't want to decry him because he loved my brother. But my dad never recovered. He never recovered from my brother dying, and he never recovered from the shame of his actions. It tormented him. And it's when the Emmett family... Listen, it happens to a lot of people, but we're very emotionally highly strung people, and the chords of the unity of the 5 of us were broken that day. It was gone. It was finished. The dream was over, and I was 24, 25. The dream was over. It's gone, finished, and that's what happened. And his girlfriend, she's beautiful. Beautiful lady. She gave birth to his son 6 months after. Charles, incredible young kid.
Yeah, he mentioned when we were talking earlier outside, and that's the one that you said,
beautiful.
Do you like yourself? But the other thing that stood out for me with that was that conversation came about because from what I could tell from the book was he said, I don't really have any affiliation to Martin, my father, because I never met him. And that you did that really for a while. You struggled with that, didn't you?
I struggled with it before he said it, because I wanted to take him to the cemetery. I wanted him to feel what he had to feel. I wanted him to be upset. But he wasn't, because, and then he tried to communicate. I mean, his dad, Robbie, I mean, they have a superb relationship.
So is that as in his...
His father here on earth.
His stepfather, so to speak.
Yeah, he's his dad.
Because he brought him up. Yeah.
He brought him up, and he's his dad. So it took me a while to agree with that in my head, and there was a few little tight bits. But Robbie and Helen, you know, there's lovely Ella, Jack, Joseph, and Charles, and Ella's got a beautiful son called Nathan. And Robbie's he's a first class father, first class. And there's no you know, they're brothers and sisters. He's their dad, and I think it's incredible what he's done. That man, I think it's beautiful what he's done. It hasn't always been easy, but it's incredible what he's done. And Charles is part of he has brothers and sisters and a mum and dad, and I think he has every entitlement to that. Yeah. But I struggled with that for a while. But when we was coming down the road in the car, and I said, we were talking away, and I've been sort of scratching at him for a long time, because I was very close to Charles when he was a boy. I spent a lot of time with him. He travelled with me. I took him to all the football games, all the rugby matches. Every holiday I went on, Charles came with me, and that was okay. That was a good 10 years, first 10 years of his life. That was okay for me to do that, and we was driving along in a car, and he said to me, and I thought it was very adult of him, very mature of him. He said, you know, you want me to tell you I love Martin? So I said, yeah, I do. He said, well, I can't tell you that because I don't know him. And I thought, well, that's an adult thing to say. And then I said to him, okay. I said, do you love yourself? You know, in a way, do you like yourself? So he said, yeah, I do. I said, well, then you love your dad, Martin. I said, because you're his double. So it ended the thing of me, it ended my expectations, and it ended it. I couldn't be angry or upset with Charles if you said there's £5 million down in the lift. I'd say, I'm sorry, you better keep it. If there was £100 million, I'm being serious. Charles to me is, he's just, I'm the leader of his fan club. I came off a lot of drugs then. I was taking a lot of drugs. I came off drugs, and I settled myself down, and I immediately got involved with the connections from my father to a very high, let's say, let me get the words right for you, Mike. It was international crime at its highest. International smugglers from many places abroad. There was Croatians involved. There was some Europeans involved. There was some. There's all sorts involved. Dutch. There was all, and what they do. I can't say too much on this podcast, Michael, but by allegedly, they move this stuff around the world, a huge amount of it, and then they distribute it to different parts of around the world, and that wasn't my business. That was their business. But they was involved, I believe, allegedly, with some same shipping, which was attached to the cartel movements out in America. Don't ask me to name anyone, Mike, 'cause I won't. And so it was organised crime at a really high level, and that wasn't what we was involved with. But we happened to be involved with the same transport, I believe. Yeah. So what was around these people was high intent smuggling. Yeah. And I know you want me to make it exciting and funny and that, and I could, but I can't.
No. It's more the story. It's the story, and it connects obviously to the to your I guess what potentially your worst moment when you got arrested.
Yeah. So there's a part of that because it breeds off people. You know it's serious. You know these people are dangerous, and you're living on the edge, and you're talking about multi-million pounds. So you can't, you can't be wet behind the ears, and you can't be showing them that you're frightened of mice, right? So you can't. So, but they'd seen that, and I suppose they laughed at it. I was stoned or whatever. But now it's becoming serious, and the people I can name, there's a very wonderful man, and his name was Dennis Lemonnier, and he was the connection between me and the group. And he was French Basque. He was he was into what grew from the earth, and be it sort of unusual vegetables. He used to grow his own cannabis. He was into jewels, the rubies and the emeralds of the world. He was a very bright man, a very intelligent man. And not to be disrespectful to you, Dennis, but he was a right scruffy guy. You would never, ever, ever believe he was this guy. Never believe. And we became friends. And he used to come and meet me, and he'd go, have a little bit of this, Michael. And it would be his homegrown grass. And we got acquainted. And in that acquaintancy, you would have never believed that we was about to organise one of the biggest importations into the UK at that time. We chilled out together. But because of my father had been arrested about 2 years previous with his friend Joe Parle, and they got out of I think it was 800 kilo of cannabis, and something happened where a witness sort of, I think he told lies, and the case got dropped. But they wanted my dad and Joe Parle. Yeah, they got Joe, they give him 14 and a half years. He was a very good man, Joe Parle. And him and my dad went their own ways, and Joe got 14 years. But when they went their own ways, they was told by the police, in other words, stop, you got away with it for far too long. And I think they was on the hit list for a number of years, him and my father, under heavy surveillance with sort of the drug squad and the customs and excise. So we down tools for a minute. Dad said, you want to go to work? I said, yeah. We're out in Spain. I meet Daniela, and I'm up to Dennis Lemonnier again. Yeah. So me and Dennis become friends, and now it's getting serious. Yeah. So they try something where we're not totally involved, but we suggest that we could help them. Yeah. And I can't go into too much detail, but we try to help them, and the load gets aborted out at sea. The police then see what we're trying to do. They put a surveillance on us, and because they've got the ump with my dad from the previous time he got out the last bit, him and Joe. Now the puzzle's fitting, but the information wasn't about England; it was abroad. They wanted this group of people, I believe. And it became an international operation with America, I believe. There was about 5 major countries that was attached to getting this. It was massive. It was absolutely massive. The intensity of their security, when I look back at it, although I realised what was going on a few times, but I chose to dismiss it because of the greed. Yeah. And we got information from a certain person that they was looking at us badly, so we down tools. And we down tools for a couple of months. But you get itchy feet. Lemonnier came back to me and said to me, or it wasn't Lemonnier, someone else came back to me and said, do you want to have another go? This was about 9 months later. And I said, yeah, come on, we'll have a go. But this time we got involved, yeah? And we created the entry into the UK down at, and trust me, I wouldn't tell you this, but you can Google this and find this out. We got involved. My co-defendant, he lived in a fishing village in Westwood Hoe in Devon. And trust me, I wouldn't be telling you. One thing I don't do is tell tales, but you Google it. It's in the book. And so I approached my partner and said, can you do this? He said, I'll try. And he come up with an arrangement where a fisherman got produced. And he was I'll tell you what, this man, the fisherman, he was an incredible man. He was one tough guy. great sense of humour. They had a head on him like you could bang nails into the wall. Great guy, him and his son Stephen. Funny enough, his surname was Fishley. So what allegedly happened there, that they went and got loads of fish, caught it prior to the entry into the UK, and they froze all this fish, and then they went out allegedly and picked it up, the cannabis. They said it was 4.5 ton. I believe it was 5 ton. But they come home. It's a very tidal Westwood O. It's very tidal there. So you have to come in with a tide. It's low tide, high tide. So we're due at home on the Sunday night at midnight on the November the 7th. But Dick got a fair run home. They loaded all the fish, the frozen fish, into them big yellow fish containers, and inside it they put the cannabis. So it was the cod and the cannabis. They called my dad the Codfather. They did in the newspaper, the Codfather. He didn't like that.
Oh, so when the story broke out, he was the headline name, the Codfather.
In one of the newspapers, yeah, the Codfather. So it was a big operation because there was 18 of us nicked, and they need 3 or 4 policemen to nick one guy. So there was about 60 officers there. Yeah. 12 were armed or 16. I don't know why them figures jump about in my head. So we arrange it. We arrange it for it to be the entry into the UK, and. So, you know, we're up and running. We do what we got to do. I'm out in Spain. All the meetings, there's meant to be high-level security. But don't matter how clever you are, when it's on you, it's on you. So there was no escaping it. The only way out of it was not to do it. I fancied there was trouble in the air, but then you dismiss it. You dismiss it and you go, oh, whatever, you dismiss it. And greed played a major part. But I wasn't that foolish enough to do it without knowing that there could be some sort of dangerous implications because of what we tried to do previous. You know, we're not stupid. You know, they don't find loads of cannabis in the sea and go, oh, we found loads of cannabis. You know, there's always a story behind it. But this group of boys that we work with, none of them were criminals besides really Peter and Lemonnier. And these fishermen and these fishmongers, I've got to be truthful with you, they were first class. They kept their mouth shut. They done their job. They was cool, these guys. A guy called Tony, Fred, I think he died. A couple of other people were involved. But first class. Absolutely first class. And I tip my hat to them, and I mean that. I haven't seen him for many years, but I will go and see him. So the entry was into the UK. He came home 11 hours on the high tide, and he arrived back in Bideford at midday on the Sunday. Should have been the night time. We came down at about... The boat was there in the afternoon. We went into the village, and Dick Fishley come out the pub. He's meant to be at sea. What are you doing? He said, it's down there. And where the tide was out, the boat was over on its side.
Right, I see, okay.
And the cannabis was in
yeah, so
the
it's
boat.
Stuck there, basically.
Stuck there till the tide come up.
Yeah, okay.
So he pointed at the boat and I thought, we've cracked it. So I went and we had this, it was funny actually, we had this way of talking to each other which we thought was safe. And it was, in Europe, it was sort of a recording that you could call. It was a number in France, and you would leave a message and your voice would come out as a Donald Duck voice. But when you left that message, you had to bleep someone at the particular time, so it would only be live for a matter of maximum a minute, and it would be deleted. Whether that was safe or not, I don't know. So I when the stuff was on the floor in Bideford, I moved to a phone box. I bleeped both my father and Lemonnier, and all I said was sweet. So they're a bit confused because we've got another 12 hours to go. So that's all I said, sweet. So Lemonnier leaves wherever he was. I don't know where he was, but he went to a phone box to respond to the message. Yeah, because I'd bleeped him. And when he went into the phone box, they got him there. And that was in London, they got him. My dad slipped the net and went down to Brighton. He was in a hotel down in Brighton. He nearly got away. They found him. He ran and they chased him, and he hid under a tarpaulin. But he was under an alias name, and he tumbled it because another bleep come through, and I put on the bleep. It weren't me. It was the police. I put the eagle was landed, and he knows I don't use words like that, and he got suspicious. So he left the hotel room. His then wife and my younger sister. And he went, as he was coming down the stairs, he was only in a sort of small B&B, it wouldn't be anything sort of cocky, me dad. They wouldn't be in the Grand in Brighton, he'd be in the little B&B round the corner, that's how he rolled. And he came down the stairs, and as he looked down the stairs, by all accounts, he sees a copper in a uniform. Now, he doesn't relate this crime to coppers in uniforms, so he's 50-50. So he stays and listens, and they said, excuse me, but have you got Brian Emmett here? He can't believe it. So he runs up into the room, gets his diary, puts his diary down the toilet. Apparently it flooded it got caught in the toilet and flooded the whole place, apparently. So he made his way downstairs. As he's running down the stairs, the fire exit, he opens one of the windows. This is what he tells me. And they're in the garden. So they shout up. I think I got told this by, I'm not sure, someone told me. They shout up, and it's my dad at the window. And he goes, it's all right, he's not here. And they go, all right. So he runs down the stairs and he hides under a tarpaulin in a disused bath. And he said they came in and searched it. He said, and they was all right. And they went to leave. And he said, have you looked under that tarpaulin? He said, my heart sank. He said, no. And they hit him with a broom, whacked him. So he screamed, he's nicked. Yeah. Now, they wanted him more than they wanted us. Because of his past activities, and they wanted him badly. And he'd reigned for many years. You've got to remember, he was 63 when he got arrested. And he'd got away with it for years.
So these two got arrested before you?
Yeah, they was arrested before us. We never knew.
Yeah.
We was now making our way.
But they clocked onto that phone line. And that's how they kind of got a hold of, was it Mounier?
Dennis Lemonnier.
Lemonnier.
Yeah.
So that's how they got a hold of him, and then your dad, and then obviously you're next, right?
Well, we don't know they're arrested. Yeah. I think they'd done Lemonnier when he went to the phone box, but I think they'd done the old man at the same time they arrested us late in the night. Excuse me. So I think so. So then we go down to Bideford. We wait at Peter's house, and me, Trotter, and Peter, and we drive down. Sorry, come back to that. There's they go down in the night time, and as they're unloading, they're nicked. Now it's pretty risky what they done, and the more I think about it, they must have thought maybe, I don't know, but nicking them first.
Oh, you think that was the risky part from the police? Well, because that could have, I guess the message could have got to you, right?
Yeah. So I often wondered what happened, but it was obviously about. But they wasn't, I don't know why, but they allowed us to drive into Bideford, and there's only one way into Bideford and one way out, and that's over a small bridge. And Alan, my mate Alan, had been driving for us down in Spain, and when he come back, he used to keep driving on the wrong side of the road. I say, "Al, you're on the wrong side of the road." It was because of Spain. Yeah. So as we come over the bridge, I said, "Al, you're on the wrong side of the road." He said, "No, I'm not." And this Golf, the light went on the Golf, and then boom, an halogen light came on. Peter run, it was police. Yeah. Michael Emmett, get out of the car and put your hands on your head and all that. There was night sights. I believe there was night sights, and I hid in the small of the car like that, so they couldn't see me. Trotter was trying to get out. I put my finger, it was an old Cortina, put my finger on it so he couldn't get out, and I said to him, "Fucking drive." He said, "They're going to kill me, they're going to kill me." I said, "Drive, Al, just drive." And he was gone. He was gone. He wasn't a young man. Bless his heart, he was my mate. He was an underdog, Al. And the car stalled. Brave Peter Bracken, he was very brave. He was very brave, trust me. he jumped out the car, and I'm sure this is true. He tried to dive into the sea. And that's freezing cold November, and it was cold. I'm not sure what would have happened to him. They might have done him a favour doing it. Anyway, they've got him. He's a big boy, big old Eddie had on him, and they was hitting him with a gun, bang, bang, and he was to the right of me, and I've got out of the car like that, and but I said, no, I ain't doing anything. Oh, fuck off. And it was like surreal. It was surreal what happened. I could see Peter was getting a clump. I said, leave him alone. And he weren't having it, Peter. He was struggling with him, Peter, and he was like an ox, this geezer. And I think they was under the cosh with him a little bit, Peter. But they tamed him down, as they do with guns, and you're outnumbered. And then, and it was surreal. It was like, a bit like that light there, it was. And there's all these guns here on the quay side. Sure, there was a number of guns. It was like, it was everywhere. And then they're coming towards me. But it was very sort of cinematic. It was very sort of light and, cut, take two. That could have easily happened.
It felt really like the movies.
Absolutely, it did. It really did.
But none of you were armed, were you?
No.
They just probably, just simply because it's such a big drug case, they're probably...
I think it was the influence of Lemonier's people. There was the influence of my dad. But I don't think they'd have come that heavy for Brian. They'd have come for him strong, don't worry about that. But this was a high level of security. And even I remember thinking that night, this is not right. This is not... I've been arrested before, nothing like this. And I believe it was the intensity of the people that was the owners and that it come out in the paper that they found a Moyet painting, copious amounts of other drugs, millions and millions of pounds, nothing to do with us, in their busts abroad. So it come out in the paper. Whether that was true or not, I don't know, Michael. Well, I do know, but... so it was intense, and they called it Operation Plimsoll. And they arrested, I think there was over 100 people arrested. So it wasn't just us. And that was sporadically around whatever that was. But we was attached. So we wasn't involved with that level of the organised crime. But our level was as big because we all had a job to do, and it was serious. It wasn't like, oh, this is okay, let's...
And also you're connected to such a big shipment.
Massive. Yeah. You're not going to get it out of me, Mike, but it was massive. So it was huge.
I wasn't trying.
You're cool. Don't worry about that.
So you get arrested, and then you and your dad and a few other people get 12 years, am I right?
We get arrested and we get 12 years. There's this sort of thing at the quayside. But it was where my old life ended and my new life began. It was a relief, if you want to know the truth. And I went into prison.
It's funny you say that. I find that such a...
I said to myself, thank God it's over. I'd had enough. It was really intense, and the fun had gone out of it. Yeah. And how much money can you spend? How much money can you earn? And we'd lost sort of whatever we'd lost, and we was there, gunned up, smashed about, thrown in the police station, and like. But when they moved us, when we used to go to court, it was intense. They'd have armed bulletproofs. And I used to think, what's all this about? Why is it so serious? Helicopters. And they thought, they thought they was going to get Lemonier off the bus, escape from him. And the bigger it got, the smaller my dad got, because I thought he thought it was over him, but it wasn't. Some of it was. And then we get 12 and a half years, yeah.
And you sharing a cell with your dad at that point?
2 stretch, I was in the cell with my dad, next door to Bill over there.
To Bill?
No. I got 12 and a half years.
12 and a half years.
2 years with my dad in a cell.
What was that like?
Getting stoned.
Yeah.
Getting high.
So we were talking about this. As a, I guess it's very alien to us or just naive about it. It does sound crazy how many drugs get into prison. Is that something you could talk about? Is it?
No, I don't want to talk about that, Mike.
Because it's everywhere, right?
I ain't got a clue. I ain't been in there for years, Mike.
But I mean, when you were there, it was very prominent. You could get pretty much what you wanted, right?
I don't know whatever you wanted. It's just angles of big banks are crooked, aren't they?
Sure.
So it's just a world we live in. So Could you get drugs in prison? Yeah, of course you could. I'm not going to tell you how you get them in there, but yeah, they was.
Love to know that one.
I'll tell you off. I'll tell you.
Tell me off camera.
Yeah, off camera.